Welcome, folks, to Paranormal Roundtable. I'm your host, Josh Turner, and with me, as always, is Sal. This is part 2 of the interview with the Tices, Luke and Brenda Tice, and we're going to get right into it. Last episode, we talked some Dogman, possible Bigfoot, some ghosts, and we're going to listen to the second part of this interview. Remember, folks, DasWolfman88 at gmail.com, DasWolfman88 at gmail.com, and wolfandsal at gmail.com.
So you started experiencing all these kind of odd things happening to you when you were 11. So tell us about that. Start from there, and then, start from there, and then we'll, because we want to hear it from the beginning, because then that'll put a lot of things into perspective for us.
Got you. Okay. When I was 11, when things started happening, it was like I was telling Josh, is I was I'm pretty sensitive spiritually, and especially when I was that young, and I started having problems in my bedroom to where when I was going to sleep at night, it was almost like the temperature would drop mainly towards the foot of my bed, around the not the headboard, the footboard, and I would almost get like it's kind of like sleep paralysis, but I wasn't asleep. Like you couldn't move. Like I couldn't move. I would just freeze up, and there would be an apparition in my room, and it got to the point so bad with that I was sleeping over towards my parents' room when I was 11, 12 years old. It just freaked me out, man. I would just literally freeze up in my bed. I couldn't move. I could feel a presence there. I could see a presence there, but there was nothing I could do, and it would just dissipate, or whatever you want to call it. It would fade away.
How long would these episodes last?
This was going on. This happened for about almost 2 months, and my parents. I was raised in a Christian home, and my parents had this lady that me and my dad called her grandma. She was an awesome lady, and she's actually still alive, and she would be speaking in tongues and stuff like that. Nothing just real crazy or nothing. It's not like she would just do it all the time. It was
Southern Baptist, right?
Yeah, but it wasn't like rattlesnakes or nothing like that,
Right, just Southern Baptist.
Yeah, she came over, and when she walked in my room, just the expression and everything with her, like I kind of backed out. Like I would just stay in the hallway, because there was a hallway that ran right there by a couple of the bedrooms. And she just started, man, going off in tongues, and she said there was like a demonic presence there. She doesn't know why it was there, but it was there. I mean, I don't know if it could have been the land or something that my parents had cleared. I don't know even why it started. Because I wasn't like, messing with Ouija boards or anything like that. I was in church and stuff. So, it freaked me out. Like I said, it freaked me out to the point that I was sleeping over towards my parents' bedroom.
You don't got to lie to us, Luke. We know you was messing around with Ouija boards.
No.
Having seances.
With his mama, he was scared.
No, I'll tell you one thing. I'll tell you one thing. It's as far as with the Ouija board, my oldest sister, when she was going through her wild stage, they used to play with Ouija boards in the cemetery. And the only story she ever told me, and she said this is when she had quit messing with them, was they were out there doing like a seance with a Ouija board, and they were trying to conjure something up, and they did conjure something up, and they said there was this figure up in the tree that was kind of crouched in the tree, dressed like a Quaker almost. They could see the outline of the hat, the clothes. It looked like it had clothes on. They said it had kind of reddish type eyes, and it was almost like they were asking it questions on the Ouija board. It freaked them out, and it was like that entity was answering them on the Ouija board, and it pretty much said it was gonna kill them. And that's when it ceased with her messing with any of that stuff. That was in Mississippi too. So in Mississippi, I don't know if y'all know, but when it gets dark in Mississippi, where I'm from, it gets dark, man. And it gets creepy, and there's like I told Josh, there's a lot of old plantation houses around there. There's just there's a lot of, it's rich in history.
Swampy humidity is what I remember going through.
Yeah,
and maybe getting mosquitoes in your mouth and ears.
that whole southern corridor going through there, Alabama, Florida.
Stuff.
It's the Georgia, the sticky, hot humidity.
Mm-hmm. Lots of it. Now I had a question, because your sister, the Ouija boards. Well, I don't like them, never have. But
no, sir.
she did. She messed around with a Ouija board at the cemetery. Well, that's kind of a double whammy right there, you know.
Yes, sir.
And seeing that particular figure up there in the tree. Now, did she ever experience anything after? You know, you said she gave that stuff up and basically said, "I'm done with it." After that particular incident, did she ever have any type of residual things still follow her around?
She told me, and also my cousin, that's a girl, they're the same age. My sister is 41. She's 10 years older than me. They said this entity type thing had followed them home that night. When they got in their car to leave, it had followed them home. Actually, the house that they went to, that's where my sister lives right now, as a matter of fact, in Mississippi, right down the street from my old house, like not even a block. That it had followed them home, and I can't remember too much after that because, I mean, she told me this back when I was 16, I think. 16 or 17. And that it had just, kind of had terrorized because my cousin was actually living in that house, her and her family at the time. And that it had terrorized her, but I didn't really get any details as far as how it terrorized my cousin. My cousin never talked about it to me. She didn't want to talk about it. I had asked her. She didn't want to talk about it at all.
I don't blame her. I guess it must have been horrendous, to say the least, you know.
Yeah, that's something that I never wanted to experience, like messing with Ouija boards or any of that kind of type stuff, because I believe that is a gateway for things to come through.
Oh, yes.
Demonic beings and things like that. So I don't even agree with them selling them at toy stores.
Yeah, and they sell them at toy stores.
Yeah, it's the most ridiculous thing. You know,
it is.
I personally have never had a poltergeist, paranormal type event like that ever in my life. But I will say this: Ouija boards. Guess what? Hey, if that's when you go messing around looking for some type of a poltergeist.
You're gonna get it.
You're gonna get it. I've never had it happen.
You don't know what you're gonna conjure up.
Thank you. And it's kind of like they're saying. Well, to me, I look at it kind of like, hey, if you don't want to run the risk of drunk driving, well, don't drink. Just cut it all out and don't do it, and then you never have to worry about drunk driving. Yeah, yeah. But even then, if you're drinking, you're still running the risk of something related to the alcohol. You know, domestic disturbance, stuff like that. So it's probably easier just to don't drink.
Wait, hold back up a second here. So if you're just at home drinking, all of a sudden you just turn into a domestic violence person.
Well, back in the
run the risk of getting, like I drink and I better watch out, honey. I might just kick you across the room.
Well, there
what
are
the heck are you talking about, man?
There are people out there like that.
Like the South Park episode where I'm drunk and I'm in trouble and I drink Pabst Blue Ribbon.
There you go. But it's one of those things, you'll have your wits about you. That's all I'm saying. So
I get smashed drunk and I stagger around with swords and I don't stab my wife.
But you know what's
been a couple close calls, but
she'd take care of you though. The second you grab the sword,
she is a fire plug.
She is a firecracker.
Yeah, well, I don't drink at home, but I'm just saying, I don't drink at all really anymore. But very rarely. But I don't think that just drinking at home is going to increase your chances of domestic violence or whatever.
No. We're talking about the potential things that could happen.
Well, you're talking about drinking and driving, and I heard Brenda say,
right.
She's like, I'm not going to go drive around drunk, and you're like, well, you drinking at all increases the risk of domestic.
It does.
It actually takes the load off for a lot of people. I think you have a drink and you're just like, I feel pretty good. I'm not going to do 8 Long Island iced teas.
Yeah, there you go.
But I mean, you have a drink, you unwind, and there's other things that people do.
But some people don't know how to control it.
Well, yeah.
See, Luke agrees.
I think that the majority of people, or we be dealing with domestic violence all the time.
You'd be surprised how many.
No, I'm not, because I run crime statistics. That's what I do. I actually do that. Like where Scorpion's at tonight. I ran the crime statistics for that place.
Oh, did you?
And they're not really that high, but there are some problems. But I guarantee you, walk in most of those people's fridges, they'd have a beer or wine or something, and they're not beating each other up over the heads with whatever. Okay, all right. Well,
what goes on behind closed doors? Whatever goes on behind closed doors, we don't really know.
Okay. Well, living in Texas increases your chances of getting hit by a cowboy hat.
No, getting shot.
Well, and getting hit by a cowboy hat
That too. It is.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Oh, this is part of the show, we just
we're just messing around, but I disagree that just drinking a beer is going to make you want to beat your neighbor.
No, I didn't say that. I'm just saying alcohol. If you take it out of the equation, all the potential anything that could happen are, reduced.
If you just don't drink at all, is what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Spoken like a Southern Baptist.
Hey, I'm talking about, but I'm using that as a reference when you talk about.
And I don't
Ouija
have a
boards.
problem with Baptists. I'm just kidding.
I don't either.
I'm not. I'm just saying because like there's a joke like the.
Well, this is all in reference to Ouija boards. That's how I feel about it. Like, just don't mess with it.
I know there's a lot of dry counties. I know where I used to live out in Haskell.
Yeah,
Haskell County was like a dry county because the Baptists didn't allow. So what the Baptists would do was drive to Stanford to get their beer.
Exactly.
And then if they ran into a Catholic, the Catholic and the Baptist would agree that they didn't see each other.
Exactly. Or the Catholic would say, I don't care because I'll talk to the priest on Sunday morning and I'll be fine.
Well, you're not supposed to. As a Catholic, you're supposed to be,
I know.
Yeah, you're supposed to be very strict and not supposed to do that. Yeah. And Baptists are the same way, but they all do it.
Well, yeah.
Not all of them, but I'm just saying.
People are people.
People are people. Like, everybody tries. You try. We all fall short of the glory of God.
That's true.
There's no way you can't. You're human.
Yeah, that's a fact.
Like I tell people all the time, and I'm not preaching here. Okay, no. It sounds preachy, but what I'm trying to say, and I'm not proselytizing to convert anyone to anything, but my personal relationship with Christ, and I know that I am human, and I feel that God knows that. Christ knows that. There's no way that you can ever achieve perfection, and so you will sin every day because we are born into it and we have no way to we just can't. Mm-hmm. The only thing you can do is be remorseful and try, and you'll fall flat on your face over and over again.
Try to be better than the person you were the day before.
But whatever you do, folks, you drink Pabst Blue Ribbon, you will go to jail.
Yeah, that's some rough stuff.
Just kidding.
But but back to the point. Yeah, Ouija boards, no thanks. Folks, don't mess with them.
That whole area, I was going to tell y'all that area over there was known for people doing like satanic type rituals out there in the country, big time back when I was a kid before we had moved here, and even a little bit after.
Wow.
There's so many places out that are like that.
I'm telling you right now, it gets
my hometown too.
It can get real creepy real quick out there at night.
First time I ever went, I was freaked out at night.
Yeah, it gets pitch black out there. You see nothing but turn rows.
Let me tell you something. My brother, he used to live up in Michigan, near Detroit, and him and a buddy were out in the woods walking around. The way he told me, I think they walked across some woods into a field where that there was some reported satanic activity, people that were doing rituals and stuff. They would find pentagrams and stuff. This was back before he became. Because my brother actually was a Satanist at one time, and he
I remember y'all talking about that.
He found God, and he came back, but he actually went out there, and there was these vehicles that were all. I guess they didn't see the vehicles; it was dark,
right?
And when they came up onto the field, there was a semicircle of a bunch of vehicles, and all their lights came on and shined on him and his friend, and then they took off running out of there.
Oh wow.
But obviously there was something going on. Why were they all parked in a semicircle hanging out and the lights came on at one time?
Kind of like circle the wagons.
Yeah, I mean that's really weird. I mean I don't know. I know that when I was a kid there were a few kids in particular, and there was satanic stuff going on, and they had this whole our parents talked to us, and they had some guy come and talk to us, and
yeah, that was I know when I was in high school. They'd have people talk about it that, it was kind of one of those awareness things. And they'd always mention the whole satanic stuff. And it's, like I said, in the 90s, for sure, it got really bad.
Yeah, the 90s, I remember that was
really
the
bad
80s and 90s. And I know that, like, playing with Ouija boards is like, like the meme on Facebook I saw, it said, you have to be 18 to smoke cigarettes and vote, but you can be 9 years old and summon demons. Conjure up demons. Yeah. And so Ouija boards to me are the quickest way to get into anything, because it's like you go deep sea fishing and you don't know what you're going to catch. You're just going to catch something. You don't see it. You're going to conjure up who knows what. I mean,
exactly.
So, Luke, let me ask you this: you had these shadow people encounters.
Yes, in this, like I said, when I was about 11 or 12, when all that was going on in my bedroom, there. Almost every time it would happen, there would be a black apparition kind of off kind of in the corner of the room, and like I said, it would kind of dissipate. It seemed like it was forever, but it's probably only maybe 10, 15
Oh,
seconds.
it'll feel like forever. I've seen them. What did it look like to you? Can you describe it?
It was, man. I know for sure it had red eyes. I mean, that's just something I don't think anybody would forget. You see some red eyes. The outline was kind of like a man. It was just kind of what's the word for it? It was kind of distorted a little bit. I couldn't make I couldn't make out any facial features. It was just kind of the outline of a body almost. I mean, if it had arms or something, it never put them out or out to its side or anything. It was just a figure there, man, and it didn't have a good feeling coming off of it. Whatever I was feeling, and to me, it was something demonic.
What about this? A lot of people report the blackness of it just being blacker than black, like darker than dark. Like
that's exactly what it was like. It was like it was darker than dark. I mean, you could see the outline in the dark. I didn't have much light coming in my room, a little bit, but I mean, with the darkness from where it was standing, there was no light coming from the window towards that corner because it just couldn't. It was darker than dark. And like I said, the feeling I had was very dreadful. The first few times that I had told my parents, they thought I was just over exaggerating. Being an 11-year-old, 12-year-old, just being, just exaggerating, just having a bad nightmare. But after it happened a few more times and they saw how serious I was and how consistent I was with the same, telling them the same thing, they took it very seriously. They were like, we think there's some spiritual warfare going on here. We need to get somebody over here, and get that lady I was telling y'all about over to the house. And after she had done that, I had no problems. But here's the crazy thing about it is my son, he stayed in that same room, and about this, I think he was about 9 or 10, and he doesn't know about any of this stuff, and he started experiencing something in that same room.
Was this recently?
This was about a couple of years ago.
He said that gray fingers.
He came to us. He said that like gray fingers would come up on the side of the bed, like grayish type fingers.
Something would be setting on the end of the bed.
Yeah, he told more to Brenda as far as that's he went to his mom first and was telling her.
Do you want to tell us that, Brenda, or
Oh yeah, it's cool. Okay, so my dad passed away in 2012 and on August 25th from lung cancer. And my son, after we had moved into this house, again, my son would come to me and tell me that Papa Craig was sitting on the end of his bed. That was not my dad, Josh and Sal. That was not my dad. So then he started telling me that it would be the same thing that Luke said. It would be like contorted and distorted and stuff, and it would be fuzzy. But then he started seeing like these long gray fingers with claws coming up the side of his bed. And he would get so scared.
How old was he?
He was 9.
Poor little guy. Oh my God.
Yeah. And he would come in our bedroom and he would sleep on our floor, which we had a hardwood floor. He would get a blanket, a pillow, and sleep on our floor. And I would wake up and look down, and there's my kid. So it got to the point where he wouldn't sleep in that room anymore. It got to the point where I would make a pallet every night, like a thick pallet on the floor next to my bed, and I would literally sleep down there with both of my kids.
Wow, that's
yeah.
Man.
But he would tell me, "Mama, it's Papa Craig," and he said that every time that it would open his mouth and try to talk, it just looked like a black hole in his mouth.
Yeah, and see, and we discussed this. I don't know if it's one of the shows we've released, but like I said, we've recorded a bunch of episodes that are
we're scheduling them for release.
Yeah,
once a
we
week,
are like 2-3 months ahead at this point. I mean, I'm not kidding. We've done a lot of work,
mm-hmm.
but one of the shows we did, I know we talked that like about how these entities they will mimic someone like a deceased loved one,
doppelgangers.
Yeah, like a doppelganger, but it's never.
We're extremely close.
Well, yeah, and it's never like exactly like one of my friends reached out to me after one of the other guys from the old days told him, "Hey, check out Wolf. He's got a show. Wolf's doing a show." So he hit me up and he's like, "Hey, Wolf, there's something that I never told you." And he said that one time that he thought he saw me on the patio or something, and he thought, but he knew it wasn't me. because he saw me come from another part of the house. Well, and he never really talked about it, but he didn't spend much time in the house anymore after that. He left.
Right.
But like he had told me that this entity had blue eyes. Well, I don't have blue eyes, and so I'm just going like, whoa. And he said
crazy.
that like there's always something that's different about this.
They don't do an exact replication.
Exactly.
Yeah. He said that the thing that looked like my dad, he also said, now I just remembered, that it didn't have eyes, that its eyes were just like black, like holes, you know, like when like the same way when it would open its mouth, it was just black.
And see, he's our son. He's like him. And my daughter are totally opposite. Like my daughter's just like, you know, social butterfly and all this, and he's like he's more reserved. You know, I don't know. To me, it seems like with him, it takes a lot, especially when he came to his mom and told her that. So I'm like, it's for me not to believe him, you know, especially after when he told his mama and then she wanted him to come tell me, and the way he didn't give me that many details. He just kind of said there was something sitting on the end of his bed and stuff. And the way he was telling it is like, okay, either he's a really good actor or he's telling the truth. And me, I was like, he's telling the truth, you know.
He's an introvert.
Yeah,
what's that?
He's an introvert. Introverted person.
And when he has something to say, it's usually because it's something to say.
Typically, introverts typically, they when they say something, they have something to say.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, that's amazing.
Yes.
Creepy, but amazing.
Yeah, because my nephew Anthony, who's sitting right here in the studio, or this isn't the studio. This is actually my house.
This is the makeshift studio.
This is the makeshift. Just the makeshift travel studio. Anthony. When he was a kid, now Anthony, I don't know are you okay with me telling these stories about how creepy you were? He was an introvert. He was a very introverted kid. But there was a house that they lived in, and I don't even know how to describe it. It was a creepy old house. It was on Travis Street in Taylor, Texas. It was on Travis Street, and Anthony has no recollection of this, but I would go over there. I went over there a few times, and I crashed out on the couch in my sister's house. This is my oldest sister. And I woke up with him standing over me with his eyes closed, and then sometimes with his eyes open. It happened more than once. And I'm like, whoa. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, why are you, and so, like, I would try to put him back to bed, but then he would start to talk about weird things, like just, and I'll be real honest. I remember this, but the reason that I ended up crashing out over there is because we had a get together or something.
Partied it up.
Talking about drinking. I didn't want to drink and drive, so I was like crashed out, but I wasn't drunk though, I wasn't like drunk. Oh, I'm borracho. I can't. No, he was like, this happened, and he was standing over me, and he was holding this little red, remember that, mijo, that little, what was it, that monito you had, that Power Ranger, the red Power Ranger, and he was holding it. It was like a stuffed one. And, like it happened a couple times. Like I said, once when he was like obviously sleepwalking, and then another time when he had, and he's a very introverted child, and when he talked to me, you don't even remember this conversation, but he had called his grandmother and was babbling, saying some stuff, and it was in the middle of the night, and it was on her answering machine.
Oh, wow.
And he was talking about, I can't remember what she said you were talking about, but it was just like all this weird information. Well, he did the same thing to me one night. Like he started kind of babbling, and he kept saying something about the man touching his toes or something. And I was like, dude, me and my brother were there, and we're sitting at the table with his dad, and he kind of came in. It was like 2 or 3 in the morning, and he was babbling, and I was just like, dude. And then he walked back to bed, and I told his dad, I was like, he sleepwalks. Like he has these episodes, and like he, and like I came out of the bathroom one time, he was standing right there in the hallway, and I'm like, whoa, like, there you are again, being a very creepy kid, Right. He's a good kid, but I mean, when he was little though, but what was weird though, is it only happened in that house.
Nowhere
before that, the house he lived in before that, there was no episodes. He never did that to me, or to me and my brother, to any of us, or to his other uncle. None of us ever had any of that happen. But then he did it several times in that, or a couple times to me, but to other people too. But then, like when they moved from that house, then it stopped. And I remember, Anthony, you telling me that you had you felt weird in that house, that there was something there, and that you had some experiences there or whatever. But like I said, he's an introvert, and you never really talked to me about a whole lot after or before or whatever. It was just in that particular house. So it leads me to believe that there was something there that was causing that.
I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, I'd definitely leave that option open, because you never know, especially when you're living in old houses. And
it was an old house. It was a nice old house. It had like hardwood floors, if I remember correctly, and
about 1930s model, maybe.
Probably. It was old. There's a lot of old houses like that in Taylor. But I think as a child, how old were you at that time, Anthony? 7? You were like a little 7-year-old kid, but boy. And he's always been a weird, creepy looking kid. Like when he was born, he was like 2 feet long. I'm just kidding. I always tease him. I love him. I'm just playing with you. Seriously though, he just like it was just weird, because like you're standing out on the porch, and
there he comes.
There he comes at 2 a.m. And you're like, whoa, there you are again. Like, why do you keep getting up and wandering around? And this had never happened before, and it didn't happen afterwards, but it just happened there.
Yeah. Pretty much like your son. Yeah, pretty much like your son with that house. And some people think that having episodes like this or events like this happen to them, and then their children experiencing the same thing, there's a lot of credence that could be lent to the fact that these things may be attached to people who are particularly sensitive. Your son could be sensitive to the same things you're sensitive to. You had your episode there, Luke, and so I'm pretty sure that he's probably sensitive, and there could be something there.
So, Luke, what else has happened to you?
Well, I was going to back up real quick on that cottage we were living in.
Yes, go ahead.
One of the weird things too is after we moved in, the landlord came over, and I didn't even realize it at first in our closet, but it went up towards the attic. He told us absolutely no going in the attic. Well, that thing was sealed up pretty tight. Like, I had tried to use a battery powered drill, to take the stuff off, and that was another thing that kind of tripped me out about that place was, why not? Why can't I go in the attic? He just said absolutely no going in the attic. So no telling. I don't know what was in that attic. I don't know if that had something to do with the way that house was, how it kind of had like a shroud over it. I mean, like I said, when we first looked at it, they were built in like the 80s, I believe, the early 80s. It was, I don't know. I just didn't get a real good feeling from it. But like I said, we were in a situation we really had no choice, and actually the price on it was good, so that should have been a red flag right there.
Yeah.
For it actually being a cottage, and it was in town, close to accessible to stores and everything, but yet it was in a wooded area.
Mm-hmm. So this is the one that you guys stayed in for 4 months only?
Yes, sir. Only 4 months. And when I told you, when stuff had starting to come flying out cabinets and stuff getting moved. And another thing, like I said, I'd be sitting there playing video games most of the time when I got off work from driving all day. And there were times I'd be sitting in the recliner, and the way it was sitting, I could look to my left and look down the hallway to our bedroom. Like I told you, you could look from our bedroom into there. Pretty good little long hallway. I would always, out of the corner of my eye, I would see apparitions just out of the corner of my eye. And I would just turn and look, and and a lot of times these were times that it was just me in the house when that would happen, because I would game or something, I'd get some, the kids or nothing would be around, so
you'd catch a glimpse. What did it look like?
It was just like a it was a dark color, almost like black. I mean, that's how it caught the corner of my eye, just because it was such a dark color, and it was like it was going from the bathroom towards my kids' room.
That actually makes the hair stand up, because that I know exactly what you're talking about, and I don't.
And I would get it. Yeah, I would get that feeling in my stomach. I'd feel like something was watching me. And this would be broad daylight, man. This would be like this was during when the days that wouldn't get dark till like almost 9 o'clock.
Oh, okay. This like that'd be about the middle of summer.
Yeah, this was last from the summer to, let's see, from July, I guess that'd be 4 months, so July, August, September, October. So
I'd like to know what was in that attic.
I don't know, man. All I know is I had asked him, and he just said absolutely, don't. Yeah, I mean, he just like cut me off. He was also a weird character too. At first, he seemed like a normal person. He was like 86. He was from Poland. I'm like, man, this guy might have been around, during might have came here right when World War II was starting. But anyways, he had like a strong accent still, and he got like real. He was, I don't know if he was bipolar or something, but like we had problems with him too, and that was also another reason we got out of there. He was still in our mill. I mean, it was just a whole crazy situation, but definitely with the stuff going on in the house, I told Brenda, I said, you know what, it's time to go ahead and let's pack up and get out of here. So, backing up real quick on age wise, after all that stuff had happened in my bedroom, not too much happened between that time and when I was 20. Now, when I turned 20, um, some of my buddies and me, we were bored a few nights. We were like, so let's go out to the Salem Cemetery. That's the name of one of them. So it's just way out in the country. So we went out there one night. It was just a quiet night. I think it was close to about 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. There were 3 of us.
He's got problems, y'all.
Anyways, like this cemetery we went to is not a real big one, so like the whole driveway is like horseshoe, right? Like you go in the cemetery and it's like a horseshoe. It goes around and then comes, the exit. So we park outside the gates, and the gates are like just regular chain link fence. And on the very back side of the cemetery is nothing but solid woods. Well, anyways, we're walking up the path. We'd probably been there about 10, 15 minutes. We hadn't been drinking or doing anything. We're walking up the main little horseshoe road, if that's what you want to call it, it's horseshoe shape. No, that was a different time. And anyways, we're just walking around, and me and my buddy Chuck, he started talking about somebody that had gotten killed. I don't even know how it got brought up. We had taken a digital camera with us. We were wanting to take some pictures. Yeah, we were wanting to see if we could get anything on camera. And Sal, as a matter of fact, that's what I had messaged you about. I have those pictures in an email, and I want to send them to y'all.
Hey,
but this is what had happened. Me and Chuck were standing there talking. There's a big old oak tree behind me that's pretty much almost like dead. Like, it looks like your typical cemetery tree, I guess. And it's a real big tree. And the wind barely picks up just a little bit, and it stops. And when he got done talking about that, it sounded like somebody really heavy sat on one of the big branches on that tree. It didn't sound like the wind blew it. It sounded like somebody sat on it. It made that like, and I'm getting the chills right now because I remember it clear as day. We're standing there, and I saw his eyes, and I look at him because we can actually kind of see a little bit from the glow of the digital camera. And the other guy, he comes back over there that's with us. He's like, what's going on? I said, Chuck, take a picture behind me towards that tree. He took a picture, and all you see is this thick white, like ghostly looking trail coming from where I heard that sound, like up by a branch, and it kind of went up from the branch, and it was coming towards us.
And you guys have pictures of this?
I have pictures.
Oh, dude! Okay.
And it's in an email. It's in one of my emails that I can't remember the password. I'm locked out of it.
Oh, okay.
Josh, when y'all see this, it's crazy, man. Like, we had a few people that we showed it. Like, when he took the picture, I saw his face because he looked at it. It was on a digital camera. And like, I was like, Chuck, let me see it, because it kind of started freaking me out even more. And I saw it, and I'm like, okay, I don't know what's going on here. I think we got more than we probably bargained for.
Yeah,
and
like
we just took off out of there. Like, we were all walking pretty quick.
I don't blame you.
When did this happen?
That happened in that was before me and my wife got married. So that happened in like 2009, 2008.
So this was an old country cemetery out here in Texas.
It's
right?
actually like probably about 5 miles down the road from my house right now, and it's a all like African American cemetery.
Oh, okay, because it's reminiscent of where I grew up, and I still have a lot of family back there and everything else. But in Comanche County, there's this cemetery out there that the locals know, by the name of Ghostlight Cemetery.
Yeah.
And many people report all kinds of weird stuff out there, orbs, you name it. And I've been out there once, but it's years ago. Nothing happened, but it does. I will say this: it gives you a creepy feeling because Actually, I take that back. It's not Ghostlight Cemetery. It's like Ghostlight Bridge. There's a grave of a little girl.
Mm-hmm.
From what I understand, it was a little girl that died when settlers were moving into Texas, back in the day. And so people go out there and they leave stuff on the side of the road, that little grave and stuff like that. But people have reported all kinds of creepy stuff happening out there. Or I wouldn't say creepy, but odd things. And so what you're talking about, there's plenty of cemeteries all over Texas that are just out there by themselves. Yeah, so I'm understanding you totally.
And also, that same night, as a matter of fact, before we had gotten out of the truck, we took pictures, just like random pictures. There were orbs. I got those pictures too. There's orbs all in that picture, and my wife can attest to that because I took her out there with me. We went back there with two of the same guys. Like, this was like, I guess this was probably about a year and a half, 2 years later. I guess about 2 years later. And after me and her, we were still dating. We weren't engaged or anything yet. And when we went out there, we took pictures right when we were about to walk in. There's orbs in the pictures. There was no rain. There was no rain. None of that stuff. We had recorded some stuff on a phone that we do not have anymore, voice recorded, because we were hearing weird noises towards the back of the cemetery, and we kind of walked back there.
Yeah, I was hearing somebody pacing back and forth.
On the pacing deal, like I said, there's woods that run at the back of that cemetery on the other side of the chain link fence, and you can't see in them. I mean, it's thick foliage, and we're standing there, and we all hear this because we look at each other, and something like ungodly speed was running from one point, like the corner of the cemetery, almost to the other corner, and it did it 2 more times. It went back, and at first we thought, when we first started hearing it, because you could hear the leaves and everything. When we first heard it, we were like, okay, that's got to be like an armadillo or something, because you know how they'll rummage around in leaves and make all kinds of noise. Well, no, that it started moving down the chain link fence, like right there in the woods. And like I said, it came back. It did it 2 more times, and we got freaked out, and we ended up leaving. It was just, and it was also an eerie feeling. Like when you go out there, because I've been out there a total of, I think, about 4 times, if I remember correctly. And one, you're in a cemetery. It's not going to be a nice feeling. But on top of that, it's just like when you go out to that one, because I've been out to several ones around this area. You have that feeling of someone watching you. It's just the weirdest feeling, man. I've had that feeling out there. It was a weird feeling.
Well, you also have to consider that there's many people who reported being out in cemeteries and stuff and having Dogman encounters.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I've heard that.
Black dogs too. The Cadejo.
Yeah, the Cadejo is basically, if you did a English translation, you don't have a direct word for word translation, but it'd be the equivalent to the devil dogs, hellhounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, you get those in the cemeteries, and I've referenced this before. There was a guy that I interviewed about the Dogman, and he was a DJ at our nightclub, and he was out in Marfa, Texas, out in West Texas, and him and his, which is now his wife, they saw these 2 Dogmen that they looked like they were playing or something.
Oh wow!
And they were in a cemetery, and then of course something attacked their house. And that was the end of that. They moved, but
I would have done the same thing.
Yeah, but I think I did that one in episode 58 or something like that. I think I told that story.
Yeah, I think it was episode 58 on Vic's channel.
Vic's channel, yeah. It was a guy that DJ'd for a while, and I just remember him telling us that story, and it was pretty freaky. Like they saw it in a cemetery that was right down the road from their house, on the edge of town, or I guess, or maybe it was in town. I'm assuming, because my grandfather lived out there, and I've been out there a lot when I was younger, and I'm trying to remember exactly where they were saying that it was, and I'm trying to remember exactly where that cemetery was at, but I think it was. I think it's like in town.
Oh, the development has reached.
I think they've developed a little bit out there. It's not a big town by any means,
right,
but still, it's more people has moved out there. But they were living in an old Adobe-style house, and it was right down the road from a cemetery. And they drove by the cemetery, and they saw these Dogmen they didn't know what they were. He didn't say, "Hey, I saw Dogman." He said, "I saw werewolves." You know, he was giving me a werewolf story. He had not said anything about Dogman because this was light years before I'd ever even heard the term. I didn't even know what that was. You know.
Yeah, you weren't even familiar with the term until you got on Vic's show. Pretty much.
When he told me this story was like back in like 2000 or something. I mean, it was like a long time ago. And he's like, "Hey, I got a werewolf story," you know, because and it all started by joking around with my name. You know, somebody was like, my friend Big John was like, "We call him that because he's actually a werewolf." And then this guy tells me, "Well, I actually have a werewolf story," because we were talking about ghosts because the club is haunted. That club is haunted, and that building's well over 120 years old. Actually, I think it's even older than that, 130 years or something like that. That building, though, a lot of those buildings downtown on 6th Street in Austin, they're haunted.
Yeah.
And we talked to one of the club managers that's currently a club manager now. And he's talking about wanting to do a ghost hunt there because when he's there, he, like me, when I was, you know, working there, I experienced a lot of weird things. One of the guys that good friend that I took you downtown and met, Armando, we were walking up the stairs and something yanked our rags out of our back pockets. And I looked down and they're like sitting at the bottom of the stairs and we're in the back of the club because there's the stairs in the back of the club. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to get that. So I'll just let you keep I'm going to let you keep that because we just kind of just walked in and it was my door guy and he was like, "Yeah, I'll just go get another one. I don't need it. I'm good."
Yeah, we'll grab another one.
Yeah, so I just was, and I would be in the back. And one time I was in the back of the club by myself. I'll tell you this one. I was sober. I was working and it was early in the night. I used to open. And it was when I was a peon. I was a nobody there. I was just a little peon and I was opening the club and I went back there to get we had these little plastic ashtrays because you used to be able to smoke inside, And so I was getting some plastic ashtrays because a couple of them were broken, and we had a ton of them. And so I went back there and I was getting some and I heard somebody go, "Psst," like that. And I was like I turned around thinking it was like one of my bosses, and I was pretty sure that it was just me and one of the managers that was the only people there. So I thought maybe somebody else had come in. But I didn't hear that creakety door open from the front of the club to the back of the club because this was employees only area. And I was like looking around, and then I said their name, and then they didn't answer. So then I was like, "This is employees only." And so then I just walked out the back because I had to get something out of my truck, and then I walked back in. Well, I had propped the door open with like a rock, and my truck was right there in that back parking lot. You actually know where that parking lot is.
Yeah.
So I could see you. So, anyways, I jumped back down off of that
little
wall, that little
embankment.
I jumped down off of it. And I went, and the rock was outside, and the door was locked, was closed, and I was right there. I didn't see anybody walk by, so somebody did that. So I had to go all the way around the front of the club and bang on the door to get the manager to come and open it. And he's like, "What happened?" And I'm like, "Well, I went out the back to get my truck." And he was like, "What happened?" I was like, "Well, I put the rock and somebody." So then I told him that I had heard somebody go psst like that. And instead of him going, "Well, it's because somebody came in and, wandering around," he goes, "Dude, I hear that all the time." And then he told me that one time when he was back there or whatever, he heard a woman say, "Hey," like a woman's voice. Well, at that time, I had never heard that woman's voice, but I did eventually hear that. Like not it say, "Hey," but say something.
Mm-hmm.
And it was actually my name.
Oh, wow.
My God-given name, not Wolf.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody at that club went, like there were a lot of people that probably to this day, Wolf, they don't know my name is, nobody, they probably don't even know my real name. Most people, unless they're friends with me on Facebook, they don't even know. They just call me Wolf. Everybody calls me Wolf. I mean, literally my own cousins and stuff call me Wolf. That's just what they do. And so when I was in the back of the club, I heard somebody say Joshua.
Wow.
And it was a woman's voice. And when I turned around, I was just like, "Whoa." And I was like, "Hello?" Like I was trying to speak and there was nobody back there. Yeah, that was weird. So.
Yeah. Totally understand the, that cemetery thing.
Another
Please.
crazy
Go
thing
ahead.
is, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go on.
Is my mama's house over there in Mississippi. It's actually it was a World War II barracks and it got converted into a house.
Oh, that's interesting.
And surprisingly, the only issues I had is you go in the house and pretty much you go through the carport go up some stairs into the house. You're in the kitchen, big kitchen area and everything, and then you can walk in the living room. Well, when you walk in the living room, you're looking straight down the hallway with all the rooms, on each side of the hallway. Anyways, if you go all the way down the hallway to the end, to the left, it would be my mama and papa's room, and then to the right was just one of the guest rooms. Well, that guest room, I had a few things happen in that room when I was in high school playing football up here. That I wouldn't even sleep in that room anymore. You can even ask my wife; she stayed in the house. We slept in the living room. And, she was like, why don't we sleep back there? And I told her this stuff when I'm about to tell y'all. Well, anyways, when I would be sleeping in that room, and I had a fan, that one of those old school fans where you press the big button on the bottom of it, and you can make it isolate. Just one of the old ones, Anyways, I had it set up by the bed. I always got to have a fan when I'm sleeping. And kind of like Josh was just saying about how he heard his name. I didn't hear my name, but it was something that was on the lines of saying like, hey, you, through the fan, through the, making, how it kind of makes that noise behind the fan when you were a kid and talked through it, but it was kind of like a lower pitch. And that happened. It only took one time for that to happen. And I was wide awake. I was aware. I wasn't half asleep. I wasn't dreaming. I was wide awake. I had just actually laid down, about to go. I'd probably been in bed maybe like 10 minutes. And that had happened, and I didn't get a good feeling from it. And I ended up getting up. And I was lifting weights and everything, man. I was pretty big, and I was like, you know what? No, I'm just going to get out of here. And ever since that had happened, I have not slept in that room. My mama and papa, they passed away not too long ago, but my aunt, she lives in that house now. And I haven't stayed there since they passed, but I will not stay in that room, man. There's just something about that room. I don't have that feeling in any of the other rooms. But I'll sleep either in the living room or the other guest room if it's available. If somebody else, family isn't staying there when we travel over there.
Wow, that's pretty crazy right there.
So what other what other things have happened to you?
No, that's pretty much. Brenda's got something. That's pretty much.
Well, we're not talking to Brenda. We're talking to Luke. Okay. Brenda, you had your turn, and now we're talking to Luke, and that's it, guys. No more stories. Whoop, see you later. I'm just kidding, Brenda. What do you have to say, Brenda?
What do you got for us?
Oh, my grandma and grandpa, because Luke had just reminded me speaking about his grandparents. So my grandma and grandpa, they lived in Fairfield, Texas, and the 2-story house that they lived in was way, way, way out in the country, and they actually excavated all the graves out there, and they built the house on top of the cemetery.
Ooh.
So that's a frog, baby. That's a baby frog. Sorry, my daughter just saw a little baby frog. Anyways, there was a small, like, little cemetery on the outside of their fence in the backyard, and the people that had lived in the house, actually my grandpa helped build that house, but the people that had lived in that house before them, they had 5 children, and all of their children passed away.
Oh man.
Yeah, so I'm talking about from the ages of 8 months all the way up to 12 years old, and they were all buried in this little, sectioned off area, that black, what is it, black iron with the points on the end of it,
yeah.
That kind of fence, yeah. And this was like back in the 1950s. I read the dates and stuff on the graves and everything, but my grandpa and my grandma would actually tell us stories about, they would hear stuff in the house. And one night, me and my cousin were asleep upstairs, and my grandpa actually came upstairs and he woke us up because he thought that we were running through the house upstairs, and we weren't. And after that, like a little while later after that, me and my mom, because I always slept with my mom and my dad when we went to the house because it freaked me out. Even when I was 12 years old, I slept with my mom and dad in that house. I would not sleep by myself. So one night I woke up and I looked, like, there was 2 rooms that were adjoined by a little hallway, but there was no door. And I looked and I saw this black thing crawling on the floor.
Ugh.
Yeah. And it was weird. I was freaked completely out. I woke my parents up and I told them, and then the next day I told my grandparents, and my grandma was like, "Oh, that thing is just the thing that walks around the house at night." And I was like, "What the frick, dude?"
Yeah. I imagine it wasn't what the freak. I imagine it was quite
it it was a bad word, but I'm
Yeah.
not going to say it.
Yeah.
And then on another occasion, they had a huge fireplace in their living room, and I was younger. I think I was probably about 6, and we were all sitting in the living room, and it was around Christmas. It wasn't cold outside. It was one of those days Texas weather, it was like 75 probably. So we were all sitting there, and me and my cousins got up and went outside to play. And the next thing you know, like my mom, my dad, my grandma, my aunt, my grandpa, they're all running out of the front door. The freaking fireplace started by itself. So they told me that. I don't definitely know if it's the truth. Maybe there was a coal in there or something, but supposedly it had started by itself. And then my grandma had these little cherubs that were hanging above the fireplace that had like music notes and stuff around them. And my grandma, I had overheard her telling my mom that one night they started singing, like she could hear singing coming from the things hanging on the wall.
That
So it was
is
pretty weird.
freaky.
Yeah, and then the swing set, there was a huge swing set in the front yard. And remember I told you the 5 kids are buried there. So the swings there'd be no wind, dude. And the swings, I've seen it myself. They would start swinging by themselves. Like a kid was literally on it swinging back and forth, all of them. So yeah, it's pretty crazy, man. And that house is still there. I haven't seen it in years, but my sister said that it's still there. And the people that live there, my sister had told me that because she lives in Fairfield, everybody in Fairfield knows everybody. She had told me that they had a preacher come out to their house and bless that house because they had so much activity going on in that house. My grandpa actually died in that house.
Oh man.
Yeah, he passed away in that house. He was on hospice and stuff. So I don't know. And he wasn't saved. Like, me and my husband, we're Christian, Southern Baptist, we're saved. But he wasn't saved. So I don't know if he's still in that house. He's probably not there now. But yeah, they had a preacher come out and bless the house and stuff.
Wow. It doesn't surprise me, all the events that you're talking about, because many, many people believe, and then others have reported that houses that are, haunted by entities, etc., that a lot of them had to do with being built over cemeteries and so on and so forth. So I would put stock in it. Was quite in stock in the idea that it was probably those children, since they were buried on a family plot right there, and it makes you wonder, were they properly exhumed and everything else and reinterred somewhere else? But
Yeah.
sounds like they weren't.
Another thing, speaking of what you were talking about a while ago with Luke with the cemetery, the whole hellhound thing, the black dogs.
Yes.
My grandma actually told my mom, I was probably about 13 at this time, and my grandma had come and stayed the weekend with us, and she was talking to my mom. She had told my mom that her dogs were barking like really, really loud, and she went out in the yard, towards the little cemetery that was on the other side of the fence, and she said that she had saw 2 large black dogs running around in the woods out there. I remember that because that really, really scared me, like I said, when I was like 13. And speaking of what y'all were talking about, that makes me think that that's probably what they were, since that house was built on top of an old cemetery.
Yeah, and Sal was asking something about with the children. Did they exhume them, or they?
No, the graves they're still there.
Oh, they just built right over the top of them.
No, what I'm saying is the cemetery, the little cemetery, is
Yes.
on the outside of the fence in the backyard.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's there. I've read all the headstones, everything. I can't remember the names. I remember some of the dates, but the little cemetery is still there on the outside of the fence.
Okay, so they didn't disturb the graves.
No, they didn't disturb the grave at all, but no telling what else.
I'm guessing the house was like right there by it.
Yeah, the house is like right here, babe, and then the fence goes all the way around the house, and then like the fence is right here, and here's the little cemetery on the outside of the fence. It's like right there.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, so it's right there. It makes you wonder, as far as the history of the place. Does it? What kind of history could it possibly have, even before that family, and and they had those unfortunate deaths of their children?
Yeah,
makes you wonder what type of history was around there, is associated with it. So it
makes you wonder what the kids passed away from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like something traumatic, disease, or a lot of times, depending, if you're talking the 1950s, 40s to 50s and whatnot, could have been a lot of illnesses that was commonplace, because probably where this house is at was not anywhere near a hospital or doctors where you could just get to them really fast, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Now I know the
that's
oldest one, my cousin, that she's like 45, but she was living in the house with my grandparents. I know the oldest child that had passed away. Her and my grandma were talking, and they found out that they actually found the little boy in the woods.
oh.
That he had passed away in the woods. Yeah, I remember them talking about that.
Did they ever say where it was from?
No, they didn't say what he passed away from because they really didn't dig into it. But my grandma and my cousin they were talking about that they had found the baby in the woods. So I don't know. I know there was a tank, like a pond, in the very back of the property.
Yes.
So maybe he might have drowned it or something.
That's well. Again, there's a traumatic death. If he drowned,
Yeah.
that's a traumatic death there. So, restless spirits, not uncommon, associated with a traumatic death. So, yeah, that's. Whew.
Speaking of like digging into, when you move somewhere, like maybe, you start having weird stuff happen, you want to know the history of the place. Back in 2007, 2008, when I was first going in the oil field, I was single and everything. I had a place actually not too far from here, and I was just having weird stuff happen there, man, and I would just like brush it off, and just things being moved, not in front of me, but just stuff that I would put somewhere and it'd be moved, and I'd go to I just didn't feel comfortable in that place too much, and I ended up getting with the owner, and I was wanting to find out the history of that place, and actually a psychic used to run her business out of that place I was in.
Oh, that's
interesting.
pretty interesting.
Yeah, when he told me that kind of connected the dots for me. It was just having that feeling, being in there, like something was watching you, in your own kitchen, not even feeling that comfortable. I did finish my lease out there, but as soon as it was up, I ended up moving out. But when I actually got him to give me the history on it, who had lived there and all that, he said the woman that had lived there before had ran her psychic business out of it. So I don't know if the bedroom I was staying in was her office where she did her stuff or what, but it was just same kind of uneasy feeling.
Well, some psychics, from what I understand, a lot of times they just give you a reading, for lack of better words. They don't usually conjure anything, but it's hard to tell what.
Well, and how are they doing it? It depends, because I think some people do have an intuitive ability, like I told you about
that's what I'm saying.
That guy that could actually read your mind.
Yeah. Some people do it naturally.
Some that actually use a familiar spirit, which is demonic.
Yeah, that's a form of conjuring.
Do you guys, is that all your stories?
That's all I have.
We have drained all your stories from you. Well, I guess we're done.
One thing I can say is, especially what had happened to me when I was younger, I wouldn't wish that on nobody, because that has stuck clear in my mind since it has happened. And like I told y'all, I'm 31 now, and I still remember it clear as day. It's not any kind of feeling I wish on anybody. The feeling that I had with that.
Yeah, that's like me. That thing poking its head out of the bushes, looking at me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I know would definitely. Just the sound of it is creepy. I know.
Thank God my daughter wasn't with me.
Yes.
People always say things. They say, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemies. I will be honest. I wish really bad things on my enemies. I will see something really horrible on TV and I'd be like, I'd like to see my enemies suffer like that.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm just a twisted person. I don't know. I'm just kidding. No, I'll leave you with this. I had, since we're talking about cemeteries, and this show has gone on and on, but you guys, I'll tell you a story, and this is the last, and then we will shut it down.
Yeah, we'll call it a night.
We'll call it a night.
Just keep talking.
Well, since we're talking about cemeteries, and Sal, I've told you this one already. I think you've already heard it, so you're nothing exciting for you. But I was doing security. This was about 15 years ago. And trying to remember, pretty sure I was working downtown too, but I had to like work 2 or 3 days a week or whatever because I had my guard card or whatever. I had to like work a certain number, I don't know, to stay in that company's system or whatever. So anyways, I got a job that I had to do, and it was only, like I said, 3 days a week. And so the guy tells me, this guy that I've known for years, he said, "Hey, I got a post for you, and I've had some problems keeping it staffed." Well, usually that's a red flag. You should know that if there's been problems, then it's probably going to be a headache.
Is this the one that paid a little bit better than the other
Yeah,
posts?
absolutely.
Okay.
And so it paid me a little more. So I said, you know what, I'll do it. And I had to drive out to the country. It was an old country cemetery, and I don't even know if I should say where it's at because it's probably not. But anyway, Shal's shaking his head no. So anyways, because you never know, these people, who knows, you're talking about people's property and stuff. Who knows? They get weird. But anyway, there's a very popular place that people go out there. But this cemetery is not far from there. And so I was working out there, and there was some sort of like boundary dispute with the people that own the land next to it. So they had to disinter like several of the graves and move the fence. Like, it was weird, like what was going on. So I go out there, and the post had been going on for about 2 or 3 days. And for 2 or 3 days, I think it was 3 days, they had a different guard every day. And so my old boss, he tells me, "Hey, can you do it?" And I'm a big dude, and he'd call me Bubba, because I'm a big guy. And this guy would always just call me that. He goes, "Hey, Bubba, can you do this? You're a big dude, and I know you're not scared." So when he starts telling me all that, I'm going like, oh, God. But then when he told me what it paid, then I was like, okay. So I go out there to work it, and I end up, it's a cemetery, okay? And like he finally tells me, well, it's a cemetery. At that point, I wanted to back out, but I had already told him, I'm not afraid, I'll do it. And there's 2 or 3 of the other guys there at the office, so I don't want to look like a coward. So I'm like, yeah, well, I'm not afraid of any ghosts. And I'm leaving the office going like, oh my God, what am I doing, dude? So I was already kind of apprehensive. So you would automatically think, okay, you're going into it thinking that something's going to happen. Well, I cleared my mind of all that, all right? I just was like, you know what? I'm not going to, I'm just, if something happens, it happens, but I'm not going to be thinking it's going to happen. I didn't ask what had happened to the other people because I didn't want to know going into it. So I get out there, and not only is it out in the country, which I don't like out in the woods.
Thanks to your event.
Thanks to what happened to me when I was 15.
Mm-hmm.
That was foremost in my mind, really. It was just like,
another Dogman.
Yeah, well, there had been sightings out there in that area. Of course, even at that point, I wasn't really calling it Dogman. I was still thinking of it as a werewolf, but I was thinking, this isn't far from so-and-so, So I'm out there, and I'm already freaked out, dude. So I get out there, and I had a big dog. There was a Mastiff, and I took him with me to work. It was out in the country. I figured, why not? So I take him out there with me. It was weird because, like, I fell asleep, okay? I'm not going to lie. I wasn't, like, the best guard in the world, okay? I mean, you're tired. It was a 14-hour shift. I fell asleep. Once the guys that were working there, they were like, all right, see you later. They left about 11 o'clock or something, and they were only there that late because they were doing something. They messed something up, and they were trying to fix it or whatever. So they were working pretty late, and so I just says, all right. So I knocked off in the corner of the cemetery, and I just went to sleep. It's not a big place, but it's not a small place either. And my dog wakes up, and he's whining. So I'm thinking, okay, Ivan, you got to go use the bathroom. So I open the door to get out. He doesn't get out of the truck. He just like stays in the back of the truck looking at me like why are you getting out, And so I'm like, come on, let's go. And he just stands there kind of moving his mouth back and forth because he was a weird dog. It was like he was trying to talk to me sometimes. And I was just like, what is this dude? What do you want, dude? I was like, you know what? Forget it. And I got back in the truck. So I go to sleep, and he starts whimpering. About like 30 minutes later, he's whimpering again. And I'm like, dude, I tried to let him out. Well, there was one of these machines, and I don't even know much about these machines, and it's pretty ridiculous because I actually work in construction security a lot. And I don't fall asleep now. Okay, this was because this is my company now. It's my company, but this was not my company. This was not my company. I was just an hourly paid guy, whatever. I was a lieutenant at that company, so I should have actually been a better employee. But anyways, I was just, there was nobody out there. It was the middle of nowhere. And so there was a machine that had one of those like
excavator.
It was like a hook on it, and it would like dig I don't know what they're called.
Excavators.
An excavator.
Backhoe,
okay. Well, it wasn't a backhoe. It wasn't a little one. It was a big one. They were digging. They were digging some stuff.
Yeah.
And so it had a light on it. And those guys that were working in there, they'd been working on it with it, until like 10, 11 o'clock, like I said. And it was summertime. Okay, so it wasn't
Hot.
dark that long. Yeah, and I had to get there like at 5 or 6 o'clock or something, and it was an annoying. I didn't even really know what I was doing there, but anyways, what had happened was when they first started working there, they had a few weird little things, like they would come in the next day and stuff would be moved around, so they thought that somebody was going out there and playing around, so they hired security. But I really didn't see why anybody would drive out to the middle of the country and mess with anything. But they did have caskets that were sitting out.
Oh my God!
Yeah, I walked around like when I first got there, and I was like, oh, okay, I don't really want to walk around this place at night, so I just got in the truck and was like, and then that's when I kind of knocked out. Well, and this wasn't even like one of the scariest places I'd ever been. I've been to some really scary places, but it was unnerving. And so the light on one of those machines came on, and this was probably like 2 a.m. And it was about 2:15 in the morning, and it just came on, and I was like, whoa, and it was just shining on me, and I thought maybe one of the workers had come back. So I get out of my truck, and my dog, at this point, he's now sound asleep.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, oh, that's great timing. And then he wouldn't get out anyway, because I tried to get him out earlier, but it was just like he's asleep. So I tried to wake him up to try to drag him out to come with me, and he just will not wake up. He's just really tired. He just kind of lays there, looks at me, and goes back to sleep. So I had to go check this out, and it was across the cemetery, and I'm walking into the light the whole time, and I'm just like, okay, I'm yelling, I'm security, the machine moved.
Oh,
what? Oh,
yeah,
no.
It moved, like it was actually on. It was on,
like turned on,
and it turned, like it swiveled.
Oh,
and I was like, somebody's, and I could see kind of like what I thought was somebody up in there, but I couldn't get a good look at it, so I ran around the side of it. And there were a couple graves that were open, So I ran around the side of it. And as I got to the side of it, there was nobody in it.
Oh, wow.
And so the light on the machine went off, and it turned off. Like the light went off first, and then the machine shut off. And I was like, so I had to go with my flashlight. I had to do my job. Mm-hmm. So I walked the perimeter of that cemetery, and I'm talking in the middle of nowhere, 2, 3 in the morning. It was very scary. That's all I can describe. It was like, and I'm thinking, did somebody get up? I have to put this in my report. I mean, I don't know what to do at this point, So I went back to my truck, and nothing else happened that night. But I did report it to the office the next day. I said, hey, there's some weird stuff happening out there. And I told him what happened, and he said, you know what? The other guards have reported that too. I don't know what that is. And I'm like, yeah, I know what it is. It's some ghost or something, because they're digging up bodies, and maybe these things aren't happy. I don't know. I said, well, I'm not going back. So my boss he's like, I got nobody. Can you come on, man? I mean, so he talked me into going back out there. So I did it the second night. I went back out there. I couldn't get my dog to go. Well, that was a red flag right there. I should have just been like, well, I'm not going, because he wouldn't even come. Like he and anybody that know my dog, he loved to ride. If you're going to get in the truck, he thought he was supposed to go. Yeah. And he'd run out to the truck and jump in there, and I had the back seat, area, whatever. He'd lay down on the floorboard. He had his own little spot in the truck, and he would go to work with me when I worked out in, these places. No, he wouldn't even walk outside the house. It was like he knew I was going back out there, and he'd rather stay in the haunted house we lived in than go back out there. So he stayed, of course my brother was there or whatever with him, so he was just like, I told my brother, I was like, he don't want to go. And he's like, well, he probably knows something's out there. I'm like, oh, thanks for the encouragement, because now I got to go back out to this haunted place. And so I go out there, and I'm really freaking scared the second night, and so I end up like going to sleep again, because I didn't know what else to do. I guess trying to go to sleep out there was just the best way that I could cope with it or something, because I didn't want to be awake. Well, I ended up having like this really weird dream that there was this guy with long hair, like kind of walking around my truck. And I woke up because it was like, it startled me. And like he didn't look menacing or anything like that. He actually kind of looked like a Native American, but I don't know, what he was. He's just walking around my truck, and it's like he was trying to talk to me, and it was almost like it was real, but then I woke up. So then I get out of the truck to stretch and to take a leak, because, there's no bathroom. I have to do whatever, So the light comes on me again. and that thing is on. The machine is on again. And so I don't know what to do at this point. I don't go up to the machine because I'm pretty confident that that's not,
there's nothing or nobody in
there's
there.
nothing there. So I just got back into the truck, and the light stayed on me for about an hour and a half, and I was just really annoyed. I turned my truck and parked at an angle so it wouldn't be directly on me, and the machine moved to like to blind me through the mirror.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was really weird. And so I did actually leave early that day. Like I just it was about, an hour before the shift, and I just was like, I'm screw this. I just took off, and then I told him, I said, you got one more day out there? I said, I'm not going to do it. I'm just not going to do it. I'm sorry, I cannot do it. And he was like, oh, whatever. He cussed a little bit. He didn't cuss at me, but he was just like, man, because, and now I know his position, because now that I run a company, it's hard when you got to cover stuff. And like, I'm going to touch this in another episode eventually. There is a church that we did that's out in the middle of nowhere. Sal knows this story because you've talked to two of the people who've been involved with it besides me. And there was a haunting going on out there. And for lack of a better, just the way to describe it, I mean, we couldn't get it staffed. We couldn't keep it staffed. I don't know how to describe, like, it was just unstaffable. Let's put it that way. Yeah. So we eventually had to give it up because it was unstaffable. And I myself went out there and had to work after I'd gone through 6 guards. But this cemetery, and I don't know whatever happened to that. I just never went back, and I said, sorry, man, you're going to have to get it covered with someone else. I've done 2 days. And I was honest. I said, look, man, I didn't even say the last hour. And he goes, I don't care. And he's like, I'm tired of this, And so I don't know if we kept it or whatever happened to it. I never did actually talk to the other 2 guards that were there before me. I didn't know them, so I didn't really talk. It was a big company, a very big company. Yeah. And so I didn't talk to those individuals. But like I said, we will talk about it in another episode, that there was a church which also had a small cemetery next to it.
Oh yeah. And
it was growed up. There were trees and everything growed up, and it was from when the Spanish were here, and way back in the 1700s. So that's that property, and of course they were renovating it, and that oftentimes brings up stuff,
disturbing it.
Yeah. And so I ended up having to work it because we went through a bunch of guards and couple guys that I thought were absolutely fearless, and they just couldn't do it. I mean, it was just terrifying, and so they left. And so, but that's another time, another story, and that's what we're gonna cut the
call this a night.
Call it a night in this discussion.
Yes.
Hey Josh, I have just 2 things real quick, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Hey, one, Sal, what did you think about that picture I sent you?
That was quite disturbing. It's, all I can think of in my mind is that I had a couple questions. The only thing I thought about it, and I thought to myself, well, some people out there are going to say, oh, it's a Photoshop. And I'm glad you brought that up, because the first question I have is, you said you got it on your iPad, right?
Yeah, it was on. Yeah, I was going to tell you the story. It's just we were living in a duplex that I guess it's a duplex, but it was a fourplex. I'm sorry. Our next door neighbors around the side of the fourplex, they had 2 little girls that were like 9. Yeah, they were same age as our son, so they were about 9 or 10. And anyways, we were just sitting there one evening, and the little girl came running. They used to come over to our house all the time. She comes running over there, banging on the door. I go to the door. She's freaking out, and all she does is, I'm like, what's going on? And she just holds her iPad up. That's what's in the picture I sent you. It's actually a picture you see of the picture on the iPad.
Wow.
And that was on the iPad. If you look at the picture closely, you can see the outline of the iPad. Like I'm holding the iPad right there, taking a picture of it.
And she took the picture?
No, she. This is what's crazy is she said she was taking a nap on the couch, and she had her iPad like propped up on the table, and she heard the iPad go off, and that's what woke her up, and that's what was on her iPad. Her camera had went off by itself.
Holy
and that's coming. That thing, whatever that apparition or whatever, you can see the face, you can see the eyes.
Yeah.
You can see, like, it looks almost demonic to me.
Yeah, it's...
Just to touch base with the Ouija board. They had a Ouija board.
I didn't know that. I didn't know about the Ouija board, but I just...
Oof.
Oh, well, all I know is that like I told you, she came running over there freaking out, and she said her iPad had went all by itself. It woke her up, and that's what she had seen, and she came running over there.
Wow. Where was her parents at this
Where
time?
were her parents?
Her parents were there. I think they were arguing. They didn't get along very well with each other.
Yeah, her mom wasn't a very nice person. I don't know
Oh.
exactly where her parents were at. I think my wife had told, her mom about it, and she blew it off as she was a really angry person. Like, she just blew it off like, whatever, I don't care, type of deal. And I mean, they spent, after they got to know us, their kids stayed at our house actually more than they stayed at their own house because their parents argued a lot and stuff.
Oh, wow. A lot of negative energy there.
And then the other thing was, Josh, I heard on one of your episodes, you were talking about panthers being here. They are definitely here. When I was driving a vacuum truck last year, in the oil field, I used to pull salt water at night. I worked from 6 in the evening till 6 in the morning. I'd see weird stuff. That we'll touch base on that on another time. But I did see 2 panthers on 2 different times when I was working nights.
Wow. That's definitely there's a lot of them. I mean, like I think people just don't realize like that they're out there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they're definitely out there. The first one I saw, I about defecated on myself.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a
and
guy
I
that
actually carried a pistol with me in my FRCs. You weren't even supposed to carry, anything, but I was like, I'm going out in the middle of the woods in the middle of nowhere, and I'm by myself. I'm taking something with
me. Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely, because I got family members that, 3 brothers that saw a Black Panther with a young, a young fawn. I wouldn't say it's a baby, but I'd say a young fawn in its mouth. And, this is out in rural Comanche County. They all 3 saw it about 15 to 20 feet away, 15 to 20 yards in front of their truck,
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't doubt that at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that they didn't, for the life of me, I know they didn't mistake a black bear for a Black Panther.
No, yeah, you're not going to mistake it once you see it. The real quick, the second one I had seen, I carried a little mini handheld spotlight that was really bright, that I would use to open up cattle gates and all that you had to get into to get to the pad, to pull the salt water. And the first one I had seen, it was probably about 70 yards from me, and it was kind of in an open field with spaced out trees, and the eyes kind of lit up like a yellowish, goldish color with the light, the eye shine on it. So you definitely can't mistake that for like a bear or something. But I'm definitely going to try to get into that email. We tried to get in it yesterday. I'm going to keep trying so I can get y'all those pictures.
Please do.
Because I really want y'all to see those. Y'all will really like them.
We definitely want to see those, and of course, all the pictures and audio or anything like that we receive. Well, we're thankful for it. We appreciate it.
Yeah, and I want to thank y'all for letting us come on because there hasn't been actually just my wife really that, besides my parents with the stuff when I was younger, stuff like that happening. I don't just, I've never really, it's good to get it off my chest and talk about it because a lot of people, you might tell that and they look at you weird or they want to change the subject or something. So I just kind of, didn't talk about it. So
we want to just put you, at ease, don't talk because we're just normal people.
Yeah. And we've, through our own experiences in our lives and stuff like that, Wolf having his, his encounter and stuff at 15 and, I'm a
Thank goodness I haven't had.
Yeah, I'm a retired soldier and all that stuff, and I've been around for a while and 2 tours in Iraq and all the other stuff, and so, basically, for lack of better words, doing counseling of any sort, preferably with people who are willing to listen to you, it does the soul a lot of good.
Yeah.
Not the ones that are going to look at you, laugh at you, because hey, who wants to be around that kind of
Those are the ones you beat up.
You want the reassurance that you're not going crazy.
Yeah. And and the world, the world is a lot more what people think it is.
Yes, sir.
Truth is stranger than fiction.
That's right.
Many cases, probably most of the cases.
That's right.
So we thank you for coming on, Luke, Brenda, you guys. This has been a wonderful and very interesting episode. Gosh, it's just, I'm sure we could keep going for hours, but
I could talk about a few more things. And
I mean, that's how we do our show. And this is the round table. You know, you guys sit at the round table and we talk, and it's you're just in your living room. Everybody there listening with us. They're just listening to you tell your stories. We tell our stories, and we're just talking. We're just having a good time.
Yes.
Nobody's. It's not this pressure of like you're in an interview and you can because I like to call it discussions. I don't really call it interviews because there's interviews and there's discussions. This is just a discussion.
Yeah, it's dang.
We're just shooting the breeze, and you're telling us what your reality is, and we're telling you what our reality is, and
what happened to you, and everything.
Yeah, and it's good to talk to native Texans.
Yes, it is.
That's right.
That's right.
I might not have been born here, but I've lived here long enough.
Oh, that's right. You're not from here.
He knows. He knows.
Now, Brenda, she's okay. Now, you know what? My wife hears me do that. She's gonna come out here and start swinging on me. She's like, she's not a Texan, but she got her as fast as she could.
Yeah. We're definitely, we'll stay in touch with y'all, and I'm gonna get those pictures one way or another.
Absolutely, we definitely appreciate it.
Like sitting outside or anything, I'll continue to take my phone out with me when I take my dog out, and if I can get any more recordings, I'll send those to you guys also.
Absolutely.
Well, you know, not that I'm wishing any more encounters upon you, Brenda and or Luke.
I'm not either, but I'm just saying it.
But if they do happen, and you know, like you said, you saw some big footprints out there, you know, one of your encounters, you get a chance, snap a picture. And this is the best way that would help you if you find a footprint and you take a picture of it, have something in your hand. You smoke a cigarette. So hey, if you got a lighter,
I'll put a cigarette box next to it.
Yeah, just for size reference.
And that's actually not the best method. I've heard that if you find a footprint, and a police officer told me this, you're supposed to jump in it with your foot and stomp around and see if that.
Okay.
To compare, just to compare, and then, and if not, then just scratch it out and redraw it.
Yeah, but definitely, put something down there for size reference, because there's a lot of people out there that take pictures, good pictures of these prints from Dogman and Sasquatch, but there's nothing there to reference it off of. So you're only looking at a picture, and you're always, as they say, the haters are going to hate.
That's right. Haters are going to hate.
I'm not trying to keep you guys on the interview any longer, but I do need to tell you this really quick.
Please.
Discussion. I'm sorry. So remember, obviously you remember, I told you about that thing that was in the bushes. Well, the next day, me and my husband I actually have pictures of this. I do have saved. Me and my husband went outside and we found 3 footprints, and something you could see like crawled through the bushes. I have pictures of that too, so I'll send you those.
Oh,
Absolutely.
Yes, thank you so much.
And make sure to go on to the Paranormal
Roundtable
on Facebook.
Okay.
Everybody that's listening, if you're not on the Paranormal Roundtable Facebook group, join.
Yeah,
join up. We get a lot of interesting stuff.
Too.
Yes.
Oh yeah, we get a lot of interesting stuff. People post a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
we filled up quick. Within like 2 days, we had like 500 members.
That's great.
It was quick. Yeah.
That's great.
I think I was like the 40th member or something like that. So hey, we were the newest ones.
Oh, yeah, well, there
that's
you
good
go.
Stuff. Yeah.
I hope y'all's show keeps growing and everything keeps going good, because like I told y'all, I love listening to it.
Well,
it's awesome. So
we're just
really
a couple of guys.
Just a couple of hicks from Texas. That's pretty much it. Sal is a red Mexican.
Yeah.
That's what Sal is, and me.
You're half red Mexican.
I'm just a half breed over here. I'm half Mexican, half white, and my mom is Mexican, my dad's white, but we're all country.
Yeah, that's true.
All Texan, I can tell you that.
That's definitely true. Oh wow! So thank you so much. It's been great, guys.
Hey, thank y'all.
We appreciate it. It was awesome talking to y'all.
Y'all have a good night.
You too.
Take it easy.
Bye.
Bye.